Despite clinching back-to-back winning seasons for the first time since 2011 and 2012, the 2024 season felt like a disappointment for Rutgers. The Scarlet Knights started 4-0 but went 3-6 down the stretch with 5 one-possession losses, including a blown 17-point lead to Kansas State in their bowl game. But now, in 2025, this team's loaded. This is arguably Greg Schiano's best team yet since returning to Piscataway, but the schedule is a lot tougher. The million-dollar question is whether or not Rutgers can make it 3 straight winning seasons, or if 2025 will also be viewed as a disappointment. You take a look at the roster. 9 starters are back on offense. Again, this is the best team, I think, that he's had since returning. 28.9 points per game. Rutgers averaged that last year. That was their best mark since 2008. And they have a lot of thanks to give to Ethan Kaliak-Manis, finally bringing some stability at the quarterback position. The Greek gunslinger threw for over 2,600 yards and 18 touchdowns last year to just 7 interceptions. Also rushed for over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. He is a stable quarterback. He's not the most electric quarterback, but he makes fairly good decisions. He's fairly accurate. I think he's going to take another step forward in 2025. Yes, they do lose their star running back, Kyle Monangai, who finished his career as the second leading rusher in Rutgers history, only behind Ray Rice, but Antoine Raymond showed flashes of brilliance last year. Even in the bowl game did so. Rushed for over 400 yards on the year with 8 touchdowns. Their number 2 and number 3 wide receivers both return, and Ian Strong and KJ Duff. And they also went out and added DT Sheffield from North Texas. Had over 800 yards with the Mean Green last year. And then, for good measure, the offensive line, the battle in the trenches, the Scarlet Knights have a lot of talent there. Over 106 career starts returning from a unit that gave up just 20 sacks in 2024. So all in all, this offense has a chance to match last year's points per game total, to match last year's stats, and be a lot more explosive and a lot more stable. So I'm really excited for what Rutgers had to bring there. Defensively, 7 starters are back, including their number 1 tackler, their star linebacker, Daryl Jabome, over 105 tackles last year at linebacker. The question for Rutgers now is the defensive line. They only had 22 sacks last year. Rutgers' defensive line actually for the last decade has been horrendous. Did you know that Rutgers has not topped 23 sacks in a season in over 11 years? It's been rough. The Scarlet Knights have not had a consistent pass rush in over a decade. They're hoping a guy like Eric O'Neill, who transfers in from James Madison, where he's a first-team Sun Belt Conference selection, can help with those sack stats, can help with getting more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. They're hoping that Jordan Walker, returning to the team as the sack leader from last year, can do that. The secondary looks to be pretty solid. They add Jacoby Henderson in from Marshall, Jet Elad coming in from UNLV, and then they do return Bo Masco, who was the 6th tackler on the team last year. They return Kaj Sanders, who was the 8th tackler on the team last year. So 2 guys that were with the team last year that played pretty solid, 2 very good transfers. Their leading tackler returns at linebacker. They've got a solid defensive line, hoping to eclipse 23 tackles for the first time in 11 years, and they're hoping to do it all with a brand new defensive coordinator, Rob Smith, who returns to Piscataway, was the defensive coordinator here in 2012, but also the defensive coordinator with Schiano in 2020 and 2021. So again, the Scarlet Knights have a good team. They've got a solid one, but the schedule is much more difficult. Last year, they avoided Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, and Iowa. Avoided every single one of them. This year, they draw Iowa, they draw Oregon, they draw Ohio State, they draw Penn State. Much more difficult. Going to be very difficult for them to match last year's win total, which was 7-5 before their loss in the bowl game. But let's go ahead and get into it. They're going to start 3-0. So let's put that to bed. They are halfway to bowl eligibility, 3 games into the season. They will beat Ohio, beat Miami, Ohio, like the MAC teams, and then Norfolk State. Iowa. I cannot stress enough how important this Iowa game is. You hope Rutgers wins more than 6. You hope that they can maybe pull off an upset here and there, but the schedule gets really tough after the month of September. This Iowa game really could determine whether or not the Scarlet Knights go bowling or not. They've got to beat the Hawkeyes at home in Piscataway. Statistically and historically, that does not line up well for them. Rutgers is 0-4 all time against Iowa. 0-4 all time. And this is shaping up to me to be a relatively low-scoring game. We know Iowa's going to have a pretty strong defense per usual. Rutgers is shaping up to have a pretty strong defense. Neither team is expected to have a very electric offense by any means, not one that's going to put tons of points on you consistently. But I'm going to tell you one thing right now. I think Rutgers makes some history, and they get their first ever win against the Hawkeyes on September 20th. I think they defend their home field. I actually think Rutgers has a better offense than the Hawkeyes right now. I know the Hawkeyes added Mark Gronowski in from South Dakota State, and they've returned a little bit of talent there, and they showed some improvement offensively last year. But I think Rutgers has a lot more talent coming back. I think they have the opportunity to be a little bit more explosive than that. I think having home field advantage plays a very big role here. I think Greg Schiano is going to drill the importance of this game for them, knowing what's at stake, knowing what's coming up ahead of their schedule. Honestly, if Rutgers, if they can force Iowa to try to win this game through the air, shut down that ground game and don't get bullied up front in the trenches, they will win this game. I think that's exactly what happens. Rutgers, for the second year in a row, starts 4-0, big-time conference win against Iowa, and now the difficult stuff begins. Iowa's not going to be easy, but now we're really getting difficult. On the road at Minnesota, Rutgers takes their first loss of the year. Now, some would say that's not going to be the case because Rutgers pulled off the upset last year. As 6.5-point underdogs, they beat Minnesota 26-19. 26-19, snapping a 4-game losing streak on the season. They had a great defensive performance. They held Minnesota to a season-low 35 rushing yards. Don't see that happening now. They've got a very good offense, Minnesota does. They're going to be fresh off of a bye week. I have a lot of faith in Drake Lindsey. They've got a solid running game. Darius Taylor is back. Really good wide receiver core, underrated, I should add. And PJ Fleck, always a very stingy defense of their own. I think Rutgers struggles a little bit to put some points on the board, especially on the road. Maybe riding a bit of an emotional high from that big win against Iowa. They dropped their first game. They're 4-1. They come out of their bye week, and I think they drop their next two. A nearly 3,000-mile trip to Washington does not bode well for the Scarlet Knights. They pulled off the win last year over the Huskies, 21-18. Washington missing the game-tying 55-yard field goal as time expired. But this is a well-rounded Washington team. I'm not really sure what to make of them. A lot of people have them pegged very high in the standings, some middle of the pack. But they've got a very strong quarterback in Damon Williams, a 1,000-yard rusher in Jonah Coleman, a great wide receiver coming back in Denzel Boston, and a underrated defense. Also, keep in mind that the streak could end by this point, but Washington, entering the season, has won 20 straight games at home. It is not an easy place to play. And I think the Scarlet Knights will struggle, especially that far away from home. They fall to Washington, and naturally, they fall to Oregon. One of the best teams in the Big Ten, was one of the best teams in the country last year. The reigning Big Ten champions will be the first ever meeting between the Ducks and the Scarlet Knights, and Oregon will immediately take the series advantage, the series edge, the series lead. Rutgers now is 4-3, 3 straight losses, and it's starting to look a lot like last year. It started 4-0, lost 4 straight games, starting to look very eerily similar, right? They're going to snap that 3-game losing streak, though, with a win at Purdue. This is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten this year, going through a major rebuilding process with Barry Odom. Not a lot of talent there. A lot of transfers. They're going to have to build chemistry quickly. Rutgers is the better team from top to bottom. Offense, defense, special teams, coaching, everything. The only thing Purdue's got here is home field advantage, and I don't expect it to be that much of an advantage considering how bad the Boilermakers are going to be. So Rutgers gets a massive win, snaps that streak. They're 5-3, and now they need just one win in their final 4 games if they want to go bowling. That's it. And some would say bowling is not, you obviously want to go bowling, but some would say that's a disappointment. But I think with the schedule that they're facing, that's a heck of an accomplishment. But can they get there? They're not going to clinch it at Illinois, I can tell you that. That was one of those heartbreaking losses for Rutgers last year, one that they should have won, right? They lost 38-31 to the Fighting Illini, allowing a 41-yard touchdown pass with 4 seconds remaining. A ridiculous catch and run, I believe it was by Pat Bryant. Ridiculous catch and run by the Fighting Illini with just 4 seconds remaining. It was just terrible defense by Rutgers. Again, at home, a game they should have won. Heartbreaking loss, and now they're going to lose again, and I don't think it's going to be by 7. I think it's going to be by a little bit more. This Illinois team is the real deal. 19 starters returning, a true playoff contender, veteran quarterback, veteran running back, veteran defense, one of the best secondaries in the nation. I just don't see the Scarlet Knights having much of a shot on the road in this one. So they're 5-4. They come back home, and if you look at the final 3 games, it really feels like they've got to beat Maryland with Ohio State and Penn State on deck. Maryland, you go bowling. You don't, you might not go. Rest assured, they'll cruise past the Terrapins. Maryland has given Rutgers issues in years past. Obviously, Rutgers actually beat the Terrapins 31-17 last year as a 4.5-point underdog to snap a 3-game losing streak in the series. So Maryland's had their number. I think Rutgers now goes on a bit of a streak of their own. They go on a 2-game winning streak against Maryland. The Terrapins have a lot of questions. Will their quarterback situation pan out? In the trenches, offensive line, defensive line has some major questions there. They ended the year very poorly in 2024, and there doesn't seem to be too much to be excited about now heading into 2025. Back at home, Rutgers and Greg Schiano deliver. They're 6-4. They're going bowling again, considering what Rutgers went through about 5-6 years ago. That's a thrill. They come out of the bye week. They go on the road to Ohio State. They're back home against Penn State. They're going to lose both of those. Rutgers is not to the point yet to truly compete and beat the top dogs in the conference. Against Ohio State, they're 0-10 all-time against the Buckeyes. They're going to be playing the Buckeyes on senior day. It's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. Then you back home against Penn State, senior day for Rutgers. They might put up a bit of a fight against the Nittany Lions, but I do think Penn State is the best team in the Big Ten this year. They are a true national title contender, a true national title favorite, and I just don't see them having much of a shot against what is probably the most well-rounded team in the entire country heading into this season. So with that, Rutgers finishes the year at 6-6, 3-6, and this to me is a classic case of a team that will finish with a record that doesn't indicate how good the team really was. They're going to be much better than their final record shows. This is Greg Schiano's best team, and some goes, best team? They're doing worse than they were last year. Well, last year, again, much easier schedule, riddled with injuries midway through the year, still managed to go 7-5. It really should have been a lot better had they been able to win those close games. This year, not as great of a record, but to me, just as good of an accomplishment. This brutal of a schedule, they find a way to get back to the postseason for the third year in a row. Fantastic year in my eyes, and a shot to get a third straight winning season if they can win their bowl game. Greg Schiano continuing to do great things in Piscataway. Again, something that 5-6 years ago, Rutgers fans would never have dreamed of. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks, home to our weekly newsletters, home to tons of exclusive content to help you get through this offseason and content you do not want to miss once the season begins. Go check it out. Become a member of our GE Nation. And before we end, a big shout out to our big-time Rutgers fans within the GE Nation, our guys DM, our guys Brandon, a Rutgers native, and Will, our good friend Will. All of you guys, many others, we appreciate you. Die-hard Rutgers faithful who have been such a big part of our channel since its inception. Hope you enjoyed the prediction video, and as always, go Scarlet Knights. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.